Hi everyone, I hope you're enjoying your Christmas break. Today we wanted to bring you another throwback episode. This is a raw conversation with Matt and Phoebe about their experience with conceiving their first child. This episode has it all, the realities of miscarriage, going through the IVF journey, and also the aftermath of having a child, where Phoebe experienced postnatal anxiety and insomnia. What I love about this conversation, and what you all loved because it is one of our most listened to conversations, is how raw the couple are in explaining the most challenging time of their lives. I hope this too makes you feel a little less alone if you're experiencing similar challenges. Enjoy.
It was just such a hectic journey, the whole IVF process and trying to work full time. And I didn't really realise how anxiety provoking and taxing it was emotionally and physically. I was really just focused on that end goal. And then the end goal happened and you go for so long, and then suddenly a pandemic hit and we had a baby, and then it's just us at home in these same four walls, day after day, doing the same monotonous stuff. There was no sleepovers, with my mum. There was no coffees and brunch dates at cafes. There was no family around or visitors. There was no holidays to Queensland. There was no story time at the library. There was no mother's group. So it was a real joyous time, especially those first 3 months in our lives. But it was almost the most loneliest I've ever felt in my whole entire life.
Hello and welcome to Parenthood, conversations about life after kids. I'm your host, Leonia Kiddenor, and every fortnight I will bring you discussions about the real and raw realities of parenting, life behind the Instagram filter. Join us as we laugh, cry and bond over the organised chaos that is parenthood. Phoebe, Matt, welcome to the podcast. So great to have you guys on with us today.
Thanks for having us. We're so excited.
Very excited.
I always love getting dads on, Matt, so it's awesome that you could be here with us as well, because we were actually the Mum Life podcast, but I just love hearing dads' opinions and getting their take on the parenthood journey as well, because if you are fortunate enough to be in a couple, there are two parents in the pictures, so it's so great to have you with us today, and thank you for being brave enough to share your story.
Absolutely. No, I'm happy to be here.
So for everyone listening, we've actually been friends for many a years. We actually ran in the same circles during all the way back from high school days. So it's been really cool to see your journey, guys, and probably similarly you guys seeing mine. But what we haven't done is really delve deep into some of the experiences that you had from trying to conceive and even the first year of parenthood. And what I'm really interested in, and I think this is where a lot of people get a huge amount of value, is really understanding some of the challenges that we do experience that are happening behind closed doors and no one's talking about them. And I think, the more we talk about these challenges, the more that people hear about other people's true stories and not just the stuff they see on Instagram, the more we sort of realize that, it can be a bumpy road for us all. And the other thing on that was I actually looked up, I don't often look at our listenership and, how many people are listening to episodes, etc. But more recently I did for the first time. And what was really interesting is that our episode called Challenges Conceiving with Sonia O'Mara was one of our most listened to episodes. So that really tells me there's a thirst out there for more true stories around people's conceiving journeys.
Happy to be here and happy to help.
So we'll start right from the start. So Phoebe, I'll throw it to you first.
Yep.
When did you know that you were ready to start trying for a baby?
It was pretty quick. It was on our honeymoon, I think. We did the romantic honeymoon first in the Maldives, which was lovely. And then we did a honeymoon with our bridal party the week later in Bali. And it was funny, all of us females were just laying by the pool all day reading books about how to get knocked up and and all of those things, and just started to learn about ovulation and how it all works, and hearing different stories about friendship groups, and finding out that it's really not as easy as we all think. You spend a lot of years trying not to get pregnant, and then suddenly you find out sometimes it's not that easy. So I think it was the honeymoon. It was quite quick that we knew we wanted to start trying, and I think it was just a few months later that we came home and we did start trying.
And Matt, were you sort of really on board as well, sort of same mindset around, okay, now we've gotten married, it would make sense for us to start trying, or were you more resistant? What was your situation?
No, I was totally on board. We were together for quite a while before we were married. So, we were both pretty keen. I was probably pushing even a little bit harder for Phoebe to get started pretty quickly after the wedding, and Phoebe was keen just to give it a couple of months just to let married life settle in before we really got stuck into it.
And so what did that process look like? I'll throw it to you, Phoebe. So when you sort of thought, okay, now I am ready, what did that look like? Because I know a lot of people get the apps and they're tracking sort of their cycles and things like that. Did you go to that sort of length, or what did it look like for you?
It was more, as I said, reading those books. There's a book called What to Expect When You're Expecting, but there's a book before that called What to Expect Before You're Expecting. And I started reading that and just learning about the body and understanding ovulation. And, I did start going through the motions of testing out the ovulation, going through using thermometers and things like that. But really, we were just trying. We wanted to keep it fun, so we were just trying. And we thankfully got pregnant quite quickly at the start. It only took a month or two, and we were pregnant very early on. And we thought, oh, this is quite easy, isn't it?
Good thing you were safe all those years ago.
That's right.
So talk to me from. Tell me about the day that you found out you were pregnant the first time.
We were in Sydney on a weekend away. It was a very special weekend, and I was a day late, and I was so excited to take a pregnancy test. So I got up at 4:00 in the morning to go to the bathroom and took a test by myself, and it turned out positive, and I was blown away. I was so excited. So I ran into the room, woke up Matt and told him the good news.
I was very confused and sleepy at first, but very quickly realised how exciting it was. And it was really like a fairy tale because it had happened so quickly, and it was probably quicker than what we were expecting. It was amazing. So I just couldn't believe it. And, what a story to tell our future, son or daughter, that we were in Sydney the weekend that we found out, and we went out and celebrated, etc. But it was. It
almost felt too good to be true. It happened too quickly. We were on a romantic weekend away. It just, from the start, it almost felt too good to be true, really.
And what were the first couple of weeks of that pregnancy like for you, Phoebe?
Everything felt really normal. I didn't really feel any changes. I wouldn't have said, oh, yes, I felt pregnant. I didn't feel any different, really. We kept the pregnancy a secret from the majority of our friends. I told my two closest girlfriends, Sarah and Olivia, who has been on the podcast a few times.
Regular, right?
It goes without saying, telling those two girls. I definitely kept it a secret from my mum. I had the whole thing planned out. We were going to surprise her with an ultrasound in a card for Mother's Day. So we're talking March 2018. This must have been. So we were excited, but keeping things very low key.
And had you done the birth scan? So did you go ahead and do the birth scan, organise the obstetrician? What was sort of the steps?
We called the obstetrician and we went in together for our 8-week scan. That was surreal. That was very exciting. There was a heartbeat, which was amazing. The fetus was measuring a little smaller than what the doctor anticipated for the number of weeks we were. but he wasn't concerned at all. I'd also had a bit of spotting that morning before the appointment. And again, he said, there's a heartbeat, not to worry, everything will be fine. So we went along that afternoon and
hearing that heartbeat though was amazing. Like that was, a life-changing moment, the first time that you hear that heartbeat. And it really probably made us more excited for what was ahead than where we were at previously, because all we'd had was the pregnancy test. So hearing that heartbeat really made it feel real.
Yeah, totally.
It's very exciting.
At what point did you realise that things weren't actually as healthy and well as you thought they were?
It was that night. So we miscarried that night. That afternoon I started having cramps. I was in agony, intense pain, hormones surging. It was like a scene out of a horror movie. I was in the bathroom, called Matt in. We called the obstetrician and he confirmed straight away what we already knew.
So what does that feel like, Phoebe? Like so you said cramp. Is it like severe period pain kind of cramp?
Pain, like just intense cramps, like you're on the floor. It was terrible. So we were just over 8 weeks.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is too graphic or not, but the sac had passed through, so we saw the sac in the bathroom, which not a lot of women do. A lot of women won't pass it, and they'll have to go into surgery and have a sweep or a DNC, which we didn't need to do. So I guess I'm thankful for that. And then it's just a few days of a really, really heavy period. And I guess all those hormones are changing rapidly. So, it's not only physically really difficult, but very mentally difficult as well. It's a shocking experience.
What was it like for you, Matt, as soon as you hear Phoebe call out from the bathroom? Like, what was going through your head? Yeah,
it was, it was traumatic, and you feel a little helpless as well because you can see how much pain your partner is in at that point, and you just know that there's nothing that can be done at that point. It's heartbreaking. There was like a real emptiness for probably a couple of weeks afterwards. It was very tough. I didn't go through the physical side of it, but it was one of the toughest things that I've ever been through, really. So it was a big challenge for both of us.
We were both at all-time lows. It was terrible. And you feel ridiculous because you're so upset over a miscarriage at 9 weeks. Yeah, it's barely a fetus, and you never really understand until you go through it yourself. Previously, to be honest, I felt very sorry if I'd heard of a woman having a miscarriage, and you're trying to understand what they're going through, and you're very empathetic, but you really can't understand what someone's going through. It's not about carrying the baby itself. It's about, that bubble that you're in for those first 8 or 9 weeks, all those thoughts running through your head of reading books every night, Googling all day, dreaming about names and the nursery, and then all your plans just come crashing down within an hour or two. So it was devastating. And to make things worse, Olivia and Sarah, my 2 best friends, were pregnant at the same time. So the 3 of us were all pregnant. It was like a dream come true. So I had so many things running through my head at that stage. But, not being pregnant with my 2 best friends was crushing.
Yeah, and after the fact, we started to realise, once we opened up with some friends and family about what had happened, just how common it was. But nobody really opens up until you start to open up. And we were just blown away by how many people that were so close to us that have been affected by similar things in the past, but we just had no idea. So for us, from that point on, we made a point of making sure that we were open about it and really sharing our story so that people know that it's okay to talk about this type of stuff.
Oh, it's so important, honestly. And there shouldn't be, I don't know, sometimes from other friends who have miscarried, they feel as though they carry a sense of shame, perhaps a sense of guilt. You know, they think back and they're like, could I have done anything to, you know, all the thoughts go running around your head. Did you guys feel those sort of emotions too?
Definitely. You go through all the stages of grief, I think. And I'd had an ultrasound that day, an internal ultrasound with the obstetrician. So I'm thinking, was it the internal ultrasound? Was it this? Was it me? Did we do anything wrong? Am I stressed? Am I not stressed? Yeah, you go through all the stages. But really talking about it with friends was so helpful, as Matt said. It was quite cathartic, and it really helped both of us, I think.
I knew in the back of my mind, deep down, that there was absolutely no chance that there was anything that we'd done that had impacted that. It just wasn't right. In hindsight, it was probably a blessing that the pregnancy failed when it did, because if we were further down the track, you know, once you start buying prams and start setting up nurseries, it's just going to be so much more traumatic. So that was kind of trying to put a positive spin on what's a pretty heavy situation was really my focus in trying to support Phoebe so that we could move on and try and get back on track.
So at what point did you actually think, you know what, we would like to start trying again?
We spent the next 2 months processing what had happened and then rather quickly moved on to, okay, let's try this again. You know, you go through, as I said, all the processes and thoughts in your head, and then you're back on board. Let's do this again. And soon after that, 2 or 3 months later, we had another miscarriage, much earlier, that we really even didn't know about the obstetrician. We went in for an appointment and the obstetrician told us that you've miscarried. So that one wasn't as painful for some reason. I don't know if it wasn't further along or we knew now that these things happen. We're not superheroes. And
the fact that we hadn't even had a positive pregnancy test on that one was, we didn't even know we were pregnant. So by the time we found out that we'd miscarried, we didn't even know it had happened.
The next 12 months were difficult, and we actually moved obstetricians. I wanted to be under the care of an obstetrician that also specialised in infertility and IVF. So the current obstetrician was a great obstetrician, but he wasn't involved in an IVF practice. And we knew at that stage that we may need to be looking at that down the track. So me, the type A personality and planner, wanted to have everything in place and ready to go. So I made that change quite early after that second miscarriage to move obstetricians. At that point, really, we needed a plan. I needed someone to tell me what to do, how we're going to go through this, and whether it was IVF or whether it was other things, I needed a plan. So the new obstetrician was fantastic. He was super supportive and great at building plans. And we saw him and we went through all the initial fertility testing just to really find out if we're both healthy and all the parts are working properly and so far.
So at what point did you actually make the decision to say, you know what, we're actually going to do these tests now just to make sure that everything's working, etc.? How long had you been trying for after that second miscarriage and then going to see the obstetrician for the tests?
Would have been about 6 months of naturally trying, and it was negative test after negative test. So, you know, at the start we were getting pregnant quite easily, and that was great. The pregnancies weren't viable, but we were getting pregnant. And then over the next 6 months, it was negative test after negative test. So that's when we thought we need a plan here of what we're going to do. So we went through all the testings, and there was no findings for either of us that would be giving us any cause for infertility. So that was great news.
Yeah, huge relief, because that was playing on the back of our minds after a couple of failed attempts and then a number of months trying without any success. Doesn't feel like it's a long time because it can take a long time to fall pregnant. But for us, those miscarriages were definitely playing on our mind a little bit. So we felt that it was best to get it checked out before we kept trying.
It's the best thing. I mean, speaking to so many different couples and mothers, etc., over this podcast, one of the biggest regrets for a lot of people is they didn't seek support earlier and they just kept trying. And I had, a girlfriend who tried for 4 years and then eventually sought support. And, and like when you know what you want and she was type A too and very driven and goal oriented, I cannot even imagine the headspace you would be month after month feeling like you failed, in what you're trying to achieve. Just on that, Phoebe, where is your head at during those 6 months when you're trying and you're not achieving, and you're an achiever? So where was your head at?
It was terrible. I was getting more and more anxious month after month. It was horrific. We saw Chris, the new obstetrician, and after we did the tests, he said, look, keep trying naturally for a while and then we can start some ovulation induction injections. So that's basically one of the first fertility treatments that you can do before IVF, and it's injecting medications, hormone medications into your system to regulate your ovulation and then increase the number of eggs during a cycle, which then would hopefully increase your chance of pregnancy. So we tried that for a few months, and that's a daunting task itself, giving yourself injections. And all my good girlfriends know I hated injections. I hated needles.
And I hate them too. I'm known to faint in hospitals. So Phoebe wouldn't let me near her with the needles. So Phoebe was an absolute trooper, having to sort of man up. And I think the first couple you got some help from friends and whatnot to get it done. But over time, you just grew in confidence, and it was amazing to see Phoebe so determined to get through that herself. It was great.
And does it play with your hormones big time as far as?
Yeah, it does. It's a lot of blood tests, a lot of visits to the doctor, and they're tracking everything as well. They're tracking all the ovulation signs for you, and then they sort of tell you, okay, you need to go now. This is your time, which is also stressful for the male, because you'll see the obstetrician that day, and he'll say, okay, we're going to give you a trigger injection now to trigger ovulation. You need to go home and have some fun in the bedroom in this 3-hour window. And that's a lot of pressure for both of you, but it's a lot of pressure for the husband.
Yeah,
what was that like for you, Matt? Like just kind of going through that process?
Yeah, it was a lot of stress and a lot of pressure because it really narrows that window, whereas previously there were a lot of variables. This really does, as I said, narrow the window where you need to perform, basically. So it made it tougher, and it probably played on both of our minds a little bit more, and potentially even added stress to the situation, which was already stressful enough. So it was an interesting process to go through, that's for sure.
And then again, we were doing these inductions for a few months, and it was a negative test again month after month. So that was, I think we were both just feeling anxious month after month, and not even really knowing it then, but our obstetrician was great, Chris. He really saw the signs that both of us were getting quite stressed, and he was fantastic. He's got a great support team with nurses and psychologists, and one thing we did do was get a referral to a fertility psychologist that Chris recommended, and that was wonderful. We both went along together each week and did a number of sessions with her. And that was a really good way to support each other as well, which was good. I found that really helped.
Yeah, I'd never heard of that, a fertility psychologist specifically. I mean, it makes so much sense. But, I mean, that's a great tip for anyone listening who is struggling as well, like, looking up someone who specialises in that area. Were there other things that you did during that process that you found supportive?
That was the main one, and we thought, okay, well, what's next in the plan? It's IVF, and we spoke to Chris, and he gave us all the ins and outs of IVF. We really started to educate ourselves, but we thought we need a reset here. So we really started the psychology lessons once a week, and we thought, okay, let's plan a trip to Europe. One last holiday before the IVF starts. So I think that was really good as well. A holiday to take away from everything, to relax. I could let my hair down.
Yeah, it was a real restart for both of us, and we both hadn't had a decent holiday for quite a while. You know, we had the honeymoon, but prior to that, it was a long time before our previous trip. So we we really needed it at that point. So it was the perfect circuit breaker for us before we really got into the IVF side of things.
And I guess also, you know, you would have gone feeling hopeful, like we've got a plan, it's going to be fine, we'll do IVF when we get back, let's just enjoy this time, versus feeling month after month that you're doing the things but not getting the results. Was that sort of the feeling as well?
Yeah, definitely. And again, being a very planned person, if I know that I've got a plan and there's a next step to the plan, then I'm okay. So I was okay knowing, look, we've done all the testing, there's nothing wrong with either of us, we've been pregnant before. We're quite anxious and stressed now. We need a circuit breaker, and we've got a plan when we come back. So we were feeling quite good and quite optimistic, which was good. Yeah.
So what happened when you got back? Talk us through the IVF process. And actually, even before you talk about your journey, tell me a little bit about how it works, because I'm sure there's other people listening as well who have no idea.
Yeah, definitely. So, well, we returned from Europe and we met with Monash IVF. They were fantastic. It's a great experience. You feel supported each and every step of the way. Nothing's left unturned. There's always someone to speak with. IVF was a way of creating healthy and strong embryos and then having implanted them at the perfect time and having the correct medications then to aid the body in remaining pregnant in those early weeks. We already had private health insurance, so that was really helpful. They give great rebates, and also Medicare give really good rebates, which I never knew as well. So make sure that you register for the safety net, which is a tip for anyone starting IVF, because they give really good rebates. Okay. The first payment, I'll talk about pricing because that's something that we didn't know. No one really speaks about pricing. That's right. So the first payment was roughly $5,000, but it includes all the appointments. They've got a dedicated team of professionals, and you're given a nursing team, which is great, of 3 nurses who you can call 24/7. It includes all your blood tests, all your scans, ultrasounds, medications, counselling as well. So the counselling that is you must do that with IVF, plus police checks. So it's a lot to go through. There's a lot of steps involved, but the price includes all of that, which was helpful.
For your first round, is that so $5,000 for your first round?
Yeah, so that's your first round, and then you pay additional fees, which are about $2,000 if you need any further transfers or freezing of embryos. So I was thinking in my head it was probably going to be about $10,000. So we were happily surprised with $5,000 plus the rebates as well. So it was achievable for us.
Do you have to have private health to do IVF?
No.
Okay.
So we found that the money you got back from your private health insurance was helpful and worth it. So that's the way we chose to go about it, but you don't have to.
So what was your very first visit like when you said, okay, we're jumping on the IVF process? What happened next?
The first cycle's really taxing. As I said, it's a lot of paperwork. You're getting everything sorted, going through all the steps, doing all the counselling, doing all the police checks. And then you start going through the stimulation phase via hormone injections. So basically growing your follicles, as well as taking hormones to ensure that the body doesn't ovulate naturally before your egg retrieval. And then medication to strengthen the uterus lining.
So is that injections plus medication during that process? Is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah.
And how often do you inject?
Once to twice a day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does it hurt when you're injecting yourself?
Yes. Yeah. Some of them don't. I'm going to say some of them don't. I don't want to scare people.
Yeah.
There's a few that do. There's a few larger than others. So
okay. And then like day one of injecting yourself, do you straight away feel the physical implications, the emotional implications of having injected yourself? Or is it a build up over time that you start feeling a little off? Or
I think it's
emotional?
a build up over time.
Okay.
Each day you start to feel those hormones racing through the body. Yeah.
What does that feel like? What are the sensations? What was it like?
Definitely not physically ill, but you just feel different. And I think a lot of that is the progesterone. Progesterone does weird and wonderful things to the body, and that's the one that is thickening the lining of the uterus. It's actually a pessary. And that one does weird and wonderful things to you. You just felt different. You can't put your finger on it, but you just feel different.
How long do you need to inject for that first bit?
It's 1 to 2 weeks. And you're going into the hospital as well for daily blood tests and scans to monitor the follicles, watch them grow, how many are there. And then they tell you exactly when to give yourself the trigger injection again. And that's to assist with the egg retrieval. So the egg retrieval is actually done in hospital under general anaesthetic. So you go in that morning, you've done your trigger injection, you both go into hospital, you stay together for the first part, and then you say goodbye to each other, and I go off to sleep and into surgery for the egg retrieval, and Matt goes into another room for his contribution.
So it's definitely one of the most awkward things that I've really had to go through, because you had to go through it a couple of times throughout this stage with the initial tests and then obviously with the IVF process.
I think this time though there's a lot of pressure because the sample is a fresh sample for the male, and it has to be done within an hour of the egg retrieval because it's important for the eggs and the sperm to be put together as soon as the eggs come out of the egg retrieval. So it's quite a process, and it's all about the length of time. So I think that's a lot of pressure as well, where when you had done it previously, it was just
not so much pressure.
That's right.
And just tried not to think about it too much, and got in there and did what I need to do so that we could keep the thing moving.
Yeah, we can laugh about it now.
Yes,
exactly.
Again, when you talk to your mates about this over a beer, it's amazing how many people have actually been through it as well. So a couple of my mates had some very funny stories where they had to stick the sample under their armpit to keep it at a temperature while they drove it to the hospital. It's quite the visual, but didn't have to do that this time around.
That is gold.
So the embryology team take the eggs and the sperm, and they're located at the same hospital that you have your retrieval. So it's all done there on that day. We go home. So we've done our 2 bits, and we say goodnight and we go home. And then it's up to the embryology team now to do their work. So they basically put it in a Petri dish and they watch it 24 hours a day for 5 days. They call you every day to give you updates on the eggs and whether they're fertilising into embryos. And we had 8 eggs retrieved, which was a good number. I think anywhere between 5 to 15 is normal. So we were really happy with 8. And then 5 fertilised over those 5 days.
Is that a good number? Like, as in, what do they say for a success rate, or what's an average?
When it comes to that part, they don't give any averages, and all they say is you only need 1. I think it's quite common to lose a lot on the way. Not all fertilise and not all survive the 5-day incubation period. It's quite normal to have your numbers drop off as the days go on. So
there's definitely a drop-off rate that they talk about, and at the start there's potentially eggs that aren't even suitable for fertilisation, so that was the first drop-off rate. Then there could be failure in the fertilisation, and then there could be failure in that incubation period. So, they definitely give you a heads up that there could be a pretty significant drop-off rate. But as Phoebe said, they're always quite positive in that you really just need 1. For us to get 5 successful fertilised eggs is a great result considering the potential drop-off rates.
Yeah, absolutely. What was it like for both of you waiting those 5 days and getting the daily updates? And what is that like? Were you just like stressed out of your minds, or were you excited?
I was really excited.
Yeah.
I was excited that one, we had eggs, and two, that they were fertilizing. So yeah, I was really excited. I wasn't stressed at all, actually. Those 5 days were okay. The stressful part comes next. After day 5, they tell you, okay, we've got 5 embryos, and they tell you to come in the next day and you'll have your transplant of your embryo. So you can either decide at that stage to freeze all of your embryos, or you can decide to have a fresh one implanted and the rest frozen, if you want to give your body a bit of a rest. But we were feeling good, so we thought, no, let's do the fresh transfer of one embryo, and we'll freeze the rest. So we went into hospital the next day, and they picked, the embryology team that morning, pick the strongest, most viable embryo that they think is going to take, and we had that transplanted. Matt, yeah.
On day 2 of the fertilisation or incubation process, I got on a plane and buggered off to LA. So I was in LA for work, and Phoebe was at home taking the phone calls, burying all the information back to me while I was in LA. So I wasn't even in the country. I was 14 hours away by plane when that egg was implanted. Back into Phoebe,
Mum took me to the hospital, and it's a nice, easy procedure, the transplant itself. It's 5 minutes. There's no anaesthetic. It's not painful at all. It's really like having a pap smear. And they get this little embryo out of the incubator and pop it in, and they show you on ultrasound. It's like a guided ultrasound, and they show you that the embryo is in the lining there, and then you're on your way.
Yeah,
you go home, and then that's when the wait is. It's then a 2-week wait to see whether that turns into a pregnancy or not. So after 2 weeks, you have a blood test, and they call you that same day with the results to let you know. And we were thankfully pregnant, which is exciting.
So amazing. First time as well, honestly. Like you hear about, you hear all the stories, right, of some people who've tried it so many times, and what a sense of relief. But then curious, were you both apprehensive, trying not cautiously optimistic given your history, or were you able to sort of go, you know what, we're feeling pretty comfortable now? Like what was going through your heads? No, we were shitting ourselves. There's no other way to explain it. When you've had a miscarriage, it plays on your mind constantly that it's great, we're pregnant now, but let's not get too excited. And it's week after week. Each week you get to is a milestone, and then the next week and the next week. It was really I'd say week 34, week 35 before Phoebe started to actually relax. So that's how long it took before we actually had peace of mind that it was a viable pregnancy and that everything was going to be okay. It was definitely playing on our mind the whole way through. Yeah, I can't even imagine. So at that point in which you're told you're pregnant, from then on, is it just like a normal, I mean, I say normal with, the talking marks, but pregnancy from then on, or are there more checks that you need to do along the way than sort of a natural pregnancy? How does it work?
Not really. It's pretty normal. And for me, it was really smooth sailing. I had a really nice pregnancy, nothing really different to report. I felt good. I didn't have any morning sickness. It was pretty easy. And there's really nothing different as far as I know with IVF, other than it's quite common now to be induced at 39 weeks now for IVF patients, because research papers are showing that the amniotic fluid and the uterus really stops functioning for the baby at 39 weeks. So it's best to get the baby out, which also suited me quite well. I was petrified of going into labour at 39, 40, 41 weeks, in the middle of the night, calling the hospital. No, you can't come in yet. You need to be this, far along. And the unknowns were so daunting to me. So when Chris said I would prefer to induce you at 39 weeks, this will be your date, this is your time, we'll see you then, I thought, great, I'm going to put that in the diary. Thank you very much.
You feel so civilized, don't you, when they tell you that? So pregnancy number 1 with me, with Noah, I did it sort of, then I guess we just sort of let it happen. And so I had the whole waiting at home and all that. And I was terrified, right? Pregnancy number 2, I had really bad. So for both pregnancies, I had really bad prenatal depression, but I won't say really bad. I had prenatal depression, but number 2 was worse, weirdly. And so it got to the point where my obstetrician said, look, for your peace of mind, we're going to look to induce you instead, because I was just so anxious about the whole thing. And I just remember feeling so civilized. You pack your bags and off you go to the hospital.
It's amazing.
You're just like, you check yourself in,
You can unpack, you know what to expect.
Exactly. So I hear, and from a mental health perspective, even just knowing that, it just takes away the one uncertainty of the million uncertainties that you have ahead of you. So I can so relate. So once you gave birth, tell me, I'd be really curious for each of you. I mean, what shocked you the most after giving birth, whether it's the birth process itself or even just the very early days of having a newborn?
What shocked me, they don't prepare you for the things they should. They, you see these beautiful photos of babies on women's chests looking beautiful after birth, and you think, oh yeah, that looks good, that's easy.
Yeah.
It's just not what happens. I remember just walking around the room for like 8 hours that day in the birthing suite, naked, my bum hanging out, people staring at me all day, leaking fluid with every contraction all over the birthing suite floor. And I'm like, should I be wearing a pad? Should I be doing something? And they're like, no, just let it all leak out. It's fine. We'll clean up after you. It's so barbaric.
Yeah.
It was, and after 30 minutes after giving birth, I was so tired and dazed, blood everywhere. It's a scene out of like a horror movie. And I remember just standing in the shower, and my private parts are about triple the size of what they normally are. There's stitches hanging down your legs, and I'm just in the shower going, I cannot believe I've just had a baby. And Mrs. It's just, they don't tell you all that stuff.
No.
It's all about the breastfeeding and the this and the that, and it's the nursery planning. And once you're home, no, they need to tell you what it's really like.
Absolutely. I can so relate. I had an episiotomy, and so similarly had the stitches and all that, and you're sitting there like on one bum cheek after, and you're like, and then you shuffle over to the other bum cheek, and you're like, how long is this pain going to be there for?
Putting ice packs down there. It's crazy, but it's all worth it. And people must forget about it because they go back and do it again.
Yeah. What about you, Matt, in those very early stages, birth and, the first couple of weeks, what comes to mind around the shock factor?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, nobody warned me that I'd be following Phoebe around for those 8 hours with paper towels mopping up after her, so I'm sure to warn all of my mates as soon as I find out that they're pregnant with their first. I'm like, okay, here's the lowdown. So it really was an amazing process, though. Again, Phoebe was amazing that day. And it's like when the baby arrives, it's just the most euphoric feeling that you just cannot describe, and everyone says it, and when you're hearing about it in the lead up to, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm sure it'll be amazing, but words really can't describe how amazing it is, and the love that fills that room, in the first couple of hours after the birth. It's quite amazing. But then the first 4 to 5 days, once you get out of that birthing suite, it's quite a roller coaster. It's
a shit show.
Yes, it's not a lot of sleep, a lot of things to learn. It's a real crash course, and
no book. I can tell you, I read 100 books. Nothing will prepare you we'll talk about what we went through, and I suffered from postnatal anxiety and depression after having gorgeous little Millie. She was an angel child, an angel baby, and I was very emotional at the start, but it wasn't until the 3rd month that I realised something was different. It was just such a hectic journey. The whole IVF process and trying to work full time, and I didn't really realise how anxiety provoking and taxing it was emotionally and physically. I was really just focused on that end goal, and then the end goal happened, and you go for so long, and then suddenly a pandemic hit and we had a baby, and then it's just us at home in these same 4 walls day after day doing the same monotonous stuff. There was no sleepovers, with my mum. There was no coffees and brunch dates at cafes. There was no family around or visitors. There was no holidays to Queensland. There was no story time at the library. There was no mother's group. So it was a real joyous time, especially those first 3 months in our lives. But it was almost the most loneliest I've ever felt in my whole entire life. I can't describe it. And then we had the addition of Millie being diagnosed with hip dysplasia. I had breastfeeding issues. I was put on Metilium treatment, which is the tablet to produce breast milk, which played havoc on my hormones. Millie had a cow's milk allergy and had to stop breastfeeding, and she was allergic to every formula. My grandfather passed away the week that I gave birth to Millie. It was a tough time. So I think by the 3rd month, I realised something felt different, and it was really insomnia, which I'd never suffered before. And I was walking around the house. Millie was sleeping like a dream 12 hours a night since 7 weeks of age.
Wow.
Matt was sleeping like a baby, and then suddenly I'm walking around the house, and there was 3 nights in a row at one stage where I was sleeping for 60 to 90 minutes, and that's it. Wow. So it was then that Matt sprung into action, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about those first 3 months as a starting point, it was literally like you heard Phoebe rattle them off there. It was like every week we faced a new challenge, and it just felt like it was never ending. So it was literally as we got towards the end of that 3-month mark where we started to get into a little bit of a rhythm, and we could start to see some light at the end of the tunnel. Millie was sleeping well, and that's when Phoebe really started to realise that there was something else going on, and it wasn't just all of the challenges that we were facing. So yeah, we hopped to it. We moved pretty quickly. Millie and I moved into the spare bedroom to give Phoebe a little bit of space. So I was really taking the lead at night so that Phoebe could rest, and Phoebe was looking after Millie through the days, and it was real teamwork. We really just played to each other's strengths and made sure that we were, I guess, dividing the duties as equally as we could, and I was taking as much of the load as possible, so that Phoebe had some space to get her mind right, because we needed her. We needed to work as a team to raise this little girl, Millie. So yeah, it was a challenging time. But Phoebe did a great job to get in to see all the right specialists and talk through all of the right things. And now we're stronger than ever after that.
So looking back on that journey then, Phoebe, what are the things you would recommend to, mums or dads experiencing postnatal insomnia, anxiety, all of those things? What helped you?
My GP was amazing. I've never really been super close with her, in and out when I've needed to. I've never suffered from anxiety or anything before where I've really needed to build a good relationship with her, but she was fantastic. She gave me her mobile number. She knew straight away what was going on. In the first few days, she had me on some sleeping pills and medications to try and assist. And as soon as they weren't working, she knew straight away that it was anxiety. And I said, well, you know, what's causing this? And she said, it's normal, you know, everything that you've been through and a pandemic. And I just couldn't believe what I was going through. I was in shock. I was this person that, you know, had my shit together, and now I don't. And when you're not getting sleep, you turn into a crazy person, and I just wasn't thinking straight. So it was just getting worse and worse. And she said, we just need to get your sleep back on track. And once you're sleeping well, Phoebe, you'll think clearly again. You're the same person. Everything's going to be okay. We're all here for you. You need to bank that sleep, and you'll start to think clearer. So as soon as we knew the sleeping tablets weren't working, she popped me onto an anti-anxiety medication very quickly, and that worked instantly. I started taking that, and she also had me on a similar medication for nighttime just to ease the racing of the mind. And they started working within days, and I was back to my old self after banking a bit of sleep quite quickly. Alongside that, we had a psychologist that actually lived a few streets away that she put me in touch with. And the psychologist was coming over to the house during lockdown. We were going for walks during the day, and sometimes if I wasn't coping, she would just call and say, I'm on the front doorstep, let me in. So she would come in and say, this is what you two need to do today. Matt, you go to work, you know, Phoebe's mum, you need to look after Millie, and I'm going to take Phoebe. And she really took the reins. And at that point, I needed someone to take control and just say, this is what's happening. This is how we're going to get through this. And then there was also a psychiatrist who was wonderful, who really is just there to monitor the whole situation, the whole big picture, as well as the medication point of view. And she works with the psychologist to give you exercises, because they don't want you on medication forever. I think the medication is really at the start. And then it's about getting the tools that you need to get through this and the long-term picture. So it's a real team-building exercise. So all of us together, we got through it, and we're here today. And I'm still on a very minimal medication from a treatment point of view. So lots of calming meditation and exercises and things like that. Gratitude we find really helpful at night time. Matt and I sit together and just quickly go through 3 things that we're grateful for that day and something we're looking forward to the next day. I find that helps me at night time get to sleep. The medication, they've said to keep on the medication. If we're thinking about getting pregnant again, it's completely safe to be on it whilst breastfeeding, or whilst getting pregnant again. And it just ensures smooth sailing next time around, that this won't happen again. And that's the main thing, I think, going into maybe thinking about down the track having baby number 2 is I can't let that happen again. I was at an all-time low. I was just so lonely, so lost. It was a dark time, and just not sleeping. I think sleep is such an important thing.
Absolutely.
And I just can't let that happen again. So my whole team, obstetrician, everyone, have just said, we won't let that happen again. We can play around with things, watch things really closely, and if we need to up anything as your hormones change, then we can. So I'm feeling really positive, and I've got this, and now I can talk about it. And there's a stigma big time with anxiety and depression, especially with postnatal, and I just feel stronger now that I can talk about it very openly with friends and family, and on the podcast. It's normal. It's so common. And
so common.
I'm taking something for a health condition, just as I would for anything else. And I feel fabulous. And I'm a fantastic mum, and I'm a fantastic wife, and I'm a better version of myself. And it's not forever, and it's just for now. And I feel fantastic.
I think it's amazing. And I think it's, and this is the whole point of it, right? But just taking away the stigma from all of these things that so many people, as you mentioned, Matt, from the start, so many people are experiencing all of these things that we've been talking about, yet no one's talking about it. I'm just curious, Phoebe, how long did it take you from feeling the depths of despair to kind of starting to feel a little bit more yourself? Are we talking a month? Are we talking weeks or months? Or how long do you think?
I'm going to say it was 2 to 3 months. It's definitely not overnight. It's a lot of work. I mean, yes, the medication helps, but changing that frame of mind and being scared of where you were and letting it happen again. And I think definitely the insomnia, you go to bed thinking, am I going to sleep tonight? How am I going to feel waking up the next morning? And then it's just that changing your mindset and your ways of thinking. There's a lot of exercises involved, and it's hard work. It's finding the time to, meditate with a newborn and, do all these things, and phone calls and Zooms and things like that with a psychologist and with a psychiatrist. It's a lot of work, but it's worth it.
For me, I often wonder if it would have been what it was if it weren't for COVID and the lockdowns that we were going through, not having that support network and not being able to spend time with family and get out and about and share the excitement. And just so many unknowns through those first couple of lockdowns. We had no idea what was going on or what was going to happen. So, I'm sure that played a huge part in everything that went down for us. And it was just a perfect storm, and but we weathered the storm. We made our way through it, and like I said earlier, stronger than ever now. So we're both better for the experience and a stronger family unit moving forward.
And I don't think we'd change anything either. I mean, sitting here today thinking about it all, I wouldn't change anything. It's just, a chapter in our book, a story to tell, and we're better than ever, stronger than ever.
I love that. To wrap up, what would each of you say to those listening who are potentially going through their own struggles, and whatever that looks like, whether that's conceiving, whether that's postnatal depression, what are the things now in hindsight, a bit of words of advice, a bit of inspo for those listening? What comes to mind, Phoebe?
There's just so much help out there, and you don't know what you need until you need it, but there is just so much help from all the team at my obstetrician's office. They've been amazing. They're receptionists. They're just, you can email, you can call. They care. That's why they do what they do. And your obstetrician, yes, it's a doctor and a surgeon, but they're humans, and they have, a lot of them have children. They've been through it, and the nurses have been fantastic, and they have resources. That's how we got our the first psychologist, the fertility psychologist. I mean, who knew they existed? You just have to say you need a little bit of help in what area you need it in. And we're all about outsourcing now. If we need something, we're outsourcing. When Millie was a few weeks old, we didn't understand how much a baby needed to sleep. So I spoke to Chris, and he said, that's okay. I've got a sleep scientist. She can come to your house, even in lockdown, and she can tell you about a baby's sleep schedule and what you need to be achieving. And so we did that. And there's breastfeeding consultants, there's psychologists, there's psychiatrists, there's a whole gamut of things. And a lot of it you're covered for as well with Medicare and private health insurance, and just talking to friends and podcasts. I mean, your podcast couldn't have come at a more perfect time for me when I was on maternity leave, and I was exercising every day to get the fresh air and the vitamin D and to clear my mind. I know that you do the same too, Leonie. Getting out for those long walks is really key for me, and I've never listened to podcasts before. So getting into those, and I'm not alone. There are so many people out there. There are so many resources and people going through the same things. So you're not alone, and just call out for help, because there is just so much out there. It's fantastic. So I'm really not scared to go and try for a second baby. now. I don't know when that will be, but I'm not scared because I know how to outsource. I know that there's help out there, and I know to ask for and put my hand up. I've always been very driven and such a fast-paced person, and never really thought I needed help with anything. And you know, sometimes you do, and that's okay, and it's there. So I'm going to reach out next time when I need it.
Oh, I love that. What about you, Matt? What comes to mind?
Yeah, it's really, I'm the same. It's really my number one piece of advice is to speak up, you know, talk to your partner, talk to family, talk to friends, talk to your GP, talk to your specialist, because there's not a single thing that we went through that was a surprise to anyone. Nearly everything that we experienced, they said, this is perfectly normal, and there's a ton of different ways we can help you through this. So, you know, there is help out there. Someone's been down the track that you're on before. So leverage that and make sure you understand what other people have done to get through it. Because, it definitely, once we spoke up and we started talking to the right people, it opened up a whole new world for us, and things got better really, really quickly. So, that's it. Speak up.
I love that. Thank you both so much for being with us today, for sharing your stories so vulnerably. You know, really appreciate it. And I know that you'll, you know, have inspired a lot of people listening. So thanks again, guys.
Pleasure. It was so nice.
Thanks, Leonie.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and give us 5 stars if you're feeling fancy. Want to be part of the parenthood community? Join our Facebook group and follow us on Instagram @ParenthoodPod. Now I'll let you get back to the organised chaos. Until next time.